Why did she still sit like a soldier, even here, in the middle of a crowded commercial flight? Sarah Martinez pressed her forehead against the cool glass of seat 13F. The endless quilt of Kansas farmland scrolling far below, green squares, golden circles, perfect lines carved by farmers who would never know her name. It should have felt ordinary, peaceful, safe, but ordinary had always been a stranger to her. She shifted in her seat. Jeans, of all things. Denim felt like armor she didn't know how to wear. Her sister Elena had insisted, "You need to look like a human being for once, not a machine." A navy sweater hugged her shoulders, soft and unfamiliar, a Christmas gift that had hung unworn in her closet while she lived in sand, dust, steel, and fire. The sweater belonged to someone else, not Colonel Martinez, not Phoenix. Just Sarah. But even in disguise, old habits clung like scars. Her posture was perfect. Back straight, feet flat, hands placed neatly on the armrests. Discipline woven into her bones after 20 years of military life. Her eyes traced the exit doors, memorized the distance to the nearest bulkhead, the placement of every latch and handle. Instinct. She had promised herself she'd stop doing it, but instinct didn't care about promises. General Hayes had forced her onto this leave. Martinez. The general had said with that knowing smile only commanders carried. "If I see you on base before May 1st, I'll have you dragged to the beach in cuffs. You've been running on caffeine and sheer willpower for 2 years. Go. Disappear. Disappear." Now, here she was. United Flight 847, San Francisco to Washington, D.C. Just another passenger, just another face in the crowd. Except she wasn't. She had never been just another face. The flight attendant stopped at her row, a woman with kind eyes, a name tag that read Jennifer Walsh. "Coffee?" she asked softly, with the warmth of someone who had seen every shade of nervous flyer. Sarah nodded. "Please." Jennifer poured with steady hands, but her gaze lingered. Sarah noticed. People always noticed. The posture, the eyes that flicked. Toward exits, scanning, measuring, the precision of how her bag had been stowed. "Military?" Jennifer asked, lowering her voice. Sarah hesitated. The question felt like a hand pressing on an old bruise. She wanted to say no, to be invisible, but her fingers betrayed her, tightening around the styrofoam cup. "Air Force," she admitted. Barely above the hum of the engines, Jennifer's eyes softened. "My husband was Navy. 22 years, Gulf deployments, retired last spring." A pause, a knowing look. "I can always tell." Sarah offered a faint smile, but inside she felt exposed, the cover of anonymity slipping. She wanted to vanish into this crowd of strangers. Nothing more than passenger 13F. But even here, the war clung to her. The man beside her hammered at his laptop, Bluetooth blinking, lips moving in an angry whisper about quarterly projections. Robert Kim. That was the name on his Amex card when he bought his overpriced sandwich. His world was numbers, margins, shareholders, across the aisle. A young mother fought to corral twin boys who seemed born to test gravity. Their father dozed with exhaustion only soldiers carried. An army, ID half visible in his wallet. Sarah recognized the bone-deep fatigue. Months of vigilance collapsing into the arms of home. Rows behind, college students laughed, earbuds tangled, voices loud with the arrogance of youth, the kind of laughter that assumed tomorrow was promised. They had no idea that the quiet woman by the window was Phoenix, that she had flown her F-16 through fire in the Hindu Kush, coaxed it back with systems failing, her squadron's lifeline on her shoulders, that she had been awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, that her face still stared down from a recruitment poster in the Pentagon's E-ring. To them, she was just another tired woman in a sweater, maybe a teacher, maybe a consultant. And for the first time in years, Sarah wanted that to be true. She closed her eyes, tried to breathe, tried to remember what normal felt like. Laughter not spiced with gallows humor, a room without scanning for threat, a flight where turbulence was just turbulence, not the prelude to fire. The engines droned. The land passed below, and for a fragile moment, Sarah allowed herself to imagine. She was free. She almost smiled. The peace has a cruel habit of breaking. The first sign was so subtle, no one else noticed. A vibration, deep in the airframe, felt more in her bones than in her ears. Her eyes snapped open, hands braced against the window frame. She knew this song. She had heard it before over Kandahar. When her Falcon's hydraulics began their death spiral, this wasn't turbulence. This was the voice of an aircraft in pain. Her watch read 3:47 p.m., 2 hours into the flight. Routine on the surface, but the tremor beneath was anything but routine. The businessman sighed, irritated, his coffee rippled. The mother pulled her boys closer, instinct tugging at her even. Without explanation, Sarah's breath slowed, her mind sharpened. Combat instincts rising like fire through smoke. Then it came again, louder this time, a shudder that rattled cups and snapped laptops shut. Passengers looked up, frowns forming, confusion first, then fear, and then the sound no traveler ever forgets. A grinding, metallic shriek from the belly of the plane. Gears stripped raw. The air shifted. Panic was rising. Captain Mike Thompson's voice crackled through the intercom. Calm, practiced, a voice trained to soothe. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some minor technical difficulties. Please return to your seats and fasten seatbelts while we sort this out. Minor technical difficulties. Sarah's blood turned cold. She had used those words herself in combat. The quiet co-pilot spoke when things were going very, very wrong. The shudder grew violent. Coffee spilled. Phones clattered. Laughter died. Behind her, someone whispered, "Oh God, oh God." And then, like a trigger pulled, the oxygen masks dropped with a hollow thunk. Yellow plastic flowers swaying. In the chaos, the cabin erupted. People clawed for masks, children screamed. A teenage girl prayed in Spanish. A man sobbed, hyperventilating into the rubber cup. The nose pitched down. Gravity yanked at their stomachs. This wasn't controlled descent. This was freefall. An aircraft wrestling its own broken body. To the passengers, it was terror. To Sarah, it was language. The pitch, the vibration, the sound of engines fighting to hold on. The feel of hydraulics bleeding out. Systems dying one by one. Multiple system failure, manual reversion. She knew the signs. She had seen them in war. But this time, she wasn't in the cockpit. She was just a passenger. Seat 13F, powerless, or so it seemed. Her heart slowed, not from fear, but from calculation. Options, checklists, possibilities. Her mind worked in cold clarity. The survival reflex honed in 100 missions where hesitation meant death. All around her, panic spread like fire through dry grass. But Sarah Martinez had never accepted helplessness as an option. Not in war, not in peace. Not now. She closed her eyes for a second, drew a breath through the mask, felt the weight of 127 souls pressing in on her. And when she opened them, again, Phoenix was awake. What would you do if the world tilted and every instinct told you it was the end? For most on Flight 847, the answer was simple. Panic. The cabin was a storm now. Oxygen masks dangled like lifelines in a drowning sea. A businessman fought to strap his on with trembling hands. A college student sobbed into his sleeve. Knuckles white on the armrest. Children wailed, their cries cutting sharper than the metallic groan of the wounded jet. It was chaos, a storm of fear. But in row 13F, there was something else. A stillness. Sarah Martinez pulled the elastic strap of her mask tight and forced her breathing into rhythm. Inhale, exhale, steady. The calm that had saved her life over. Mountains, deserts, oceans of fire. Her hands didn't shake. Her eyes didn't dart. They scanned, measured, catalogued. This was no storm to her. It was a puzzle. She could almost hear her instructor's voice from years ago at Nellis. Hydraulic. Failures don't kill you. Phoenix, panic does. Her gaze moved to the flight attendants. Jennifer Walsh, the one with kind eyes, was forcing her way down the aisle. Her face was pale, but her hands worked with discipline, helping passengers with masks, repeating the same. Steady command. Breathe normally. Stay calm. We're safe. Safe. Sarah's mind knew better. This wasn't turbulence. This wasn't temporary. The 757 was fighting for its life. She couldn't sit here. Not anymore. The thought cut through her like steel. For 18 months, she had carried call sign Phoenix like a shield and a burden. She had wanted to escape it on this flight, to be just Sarah, just a daughter, flying home to see her mother. But the world wasn't going to let her. Duty never did. As Jennifer reached row 13, Sarah reached out. Her hand closed around the attendant's. Arm firm. Not frantic, her eyes locked on hers. Jennifer, she said, calm, controlled, like briefing a wingman before a strike. Jennifer froze. She hadn't told her name. Sarah's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. I need to talk to the captain. Jennifer's training rose up like a wall. Ma'am, you need to stay seated, mask on, the crew. I'm a pilot. The words came fast, sharp. United States Air Force. I've flown through this failure before. I know what they're fighting. For a moment, Jennifer's mask slipped. The calm, professional exterior cracked just enough for raw fear to bleed through. Her eyes flicked toward the cockpit door. Hydraulics? She whispered. Sarah nodded once. Jennifer's lips parted. Caught between protocol and instinct, the FA manual said no. Her gut screamed yes. The plane shuddered again, harder this time. Overhead bins rattled. A child screamed. Something metallic clanged deep in the belly of the jet. Jennifer made her choice. She reached for the master key on her belt. Follow me. They pushed forward against the tilt of the cabin. Sarah braced herself against seats, guiding Jennifer more than being guided. Heads turned as she passed, eyes widened, passengers clutched. Her sleeve, desperate for reassurance. She stopped once, took the intercom from its cradle, and pressed the button. Her voice filled the cabin, steady and low, wrapping itself around the fear like a hand closing around flame. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Colonel Sarah Martinez. United States Air Force, call sign Phoenix. A murmur rippled through the rows. I need you to stay calm. I need you to listen to your crew. We are going to get through this. Together. Silence fell. Not peace. Not yet. But silence enough. She handed the intercom back and pushed toward the cockpit. The businessman beside her seat caught her eye as she passed. You're really Air Force? His voice cracked. Sarah placed a hand on his shoulder. Just for a beat. Yes, sir. And we're going to be fine. At the cockpit door. Jennifer's hands trembled as she fitted the key into the lock. The door swung inward, and Sarah stepped into a battlefield she knew all too well. The cockpit was a crucible. Captain Mike Thompson's face glistened with sweat, despite the cold air blasting through the vents. His knuckles shone white on the yoke, muscles straining against a machine that refused to obey. Beside him, First Officer Lisa Chun flipped through emergency checklists with machine gun precision, her lips moving, her voice clipped, calm, controlled. But her eyes betrayed the truth. They were out of time. Sarah scanned the panels once. Just once. She didn't need more. Her voice was iron. You've lost primary hydraulics. Backup's failing. You're flying on muscle and differential thrust. 15% authority at best. 10 minutes before you lose her completely. Both pilots froze, stared. Thompson's skepticism showed. First, jeans, sweater, civilian. Ma'am, we appreciate that. But Sarah cut him off with something sharper than words. Clarity, precision. Her assessment had taken seconds, and every syllable rang true. Lisa's jaw tightened. She's right, Captain. Thompson's doubt cracked into disbelief. Then into something rarer, respect. Sarah slid into the jump seat, pulling the headset over her ears. The motion was instinct. Coming home. My name is Colonel Sarah Martinez. Call sign Phoenix. I've flown through this before. Different bird. Same failure. If you want to save this aircraft, I can help. The radio hissed. Air traffic control's voice bled through static. United 847. Denver Center, say status. Sarah grabbed the mic before Thompson could answer. Denver Center, United 847. This is Colonel Sarah Martinez, U.S. Air Force. Call sign Phoenix. Assisting flight crew with hydraulic failure. Request vectors to nearest suitable runway, and full emergency response. Silence followed, not static silence. And then the controller's voice came back, changed, heavy. Confirm call sign Phoenix? Sarah's answer was steady. Confirmed. Phoenix is on station. Outside, somewhere beyond clouds and broken air, her name was rippling like fire through every frequency. Through bases and towers, across ready rooms and mess halls. Phoenix in the cockpit. Captain Thompson looked at her, really looked. The sweat, the fear, the weight of lives. What do you need? He asked. Sarah's eyes locked on his. Trust me, she said. The plane bucked again. The horizon tilted. Warnings flashed red. Sarah gripped the console, and for the first time in 2 years, she felt it, the shift, the burn, the call, the moment. When war reached out and dragged her back into the fire, and Phoenix answered. Did they really hear what they thought they heard? At Denver Center, Controller Jake Morrison froze, his coffee halfway to his lips. His headset buzzed with the voice that had just cut through every barrier of disbelief. Phoenix. He mouthed. Words silently. He knew it. Every controller who had ever worked at combat theater knew it. The call sign wasn't just a name. It was a story. A myth whispered in towers from Bagram to Ballad. A pilot who had dragged broken jets through impossible odds. Who had made physics bend when survival said no. And now she was here, on a wounded 757, carrying 127 souls. Did she just say Phoenix? His supervisor asked, leaning over his console, her voice shaking despite decades in aviation. Yeah, Jake whispered. His fingers were already moving across screens, pulling protocols, opening military channels. Yeah, she did. The command spread like wildfire. Within 90 seconds, Peterson Space Force Base lit up. Buckley scrambled their ready rooms. Cheyenne Mountain flagged her record, a file so redacted it looked like black ink spilled across classified pages. But the name was clear. Phoenix. At Buckley. Major Kevin Hawk Rodriguez was halfway through paperwork when the klaxon screamed. He didn't need details. The red light flashing across the screen told him enough. Emergency scramble, civilian. Airliner in distress. He grabbed his helmet, his flight suit, his wingman. Captain Amy Viper Chun already stood ready by the lockers. What's the threat? She called. No threat, Hawk answered, strapping in Guardian Angel mission escort. He paused. His voice dipped with reverence. Phoenix is aboard. Amy froze. Her eyes widened. That Phoenix? The one she didn't need to ask more. Every pilot in the Air Force knew the stories. Some thought they were legends, exaggerated in ready rooms. But Amy had studied the manuals, Sarah Martinez's tactics. Her survival checklists, they were doctrine now. And now Phoenix needed them within minutes. Twin F-22 Raptors thundered down the runway. Their afterburners tore across the Colorado sky. Buckley Tower, Hawk Flight Airborne, vector us to United. 847. From the ground, technicians and off-duty airmen spilled out to watch. Raptors screamed skyward, streaks of silver light, and behind the roar lay something more. Hope. Back in Denver Center, Jake's hands trembled as he relayed updates. United. 847. Hawk flight is en route. ETA 12 minutes. Phoenix, confirm status. Sarah's voice came back through the static, steady as stone. Denver Center, Phoenix. Aircraft unstable. Multiple hydraulics lost. Captain Thompson and First Officer Chun. Holding her steady. I'll need every foot of runway and emergency services on deck. This landing will be unconventional. Jake exhaled slowly. Unconventional. Military understatement at its finest. He'd heard her on frequency once before. In Afghanistan, same calm tone, same defiance against impossible odds. He whispered to himself now, almost a prayer. Bring them home, Phoenix, across the country. The ripple grew. At Langley, Colonel Marcus Webb was briefing budget numbers. When an aide burst into the room, pale with urgency. Sir, Colonel Martinez. Phoenix, she's aboard a United flight. Hydraulic failure. She's assisting. The colonel froze. For a heartbeat, he didn't see his paperwork. He saw her 12 years younger, fire in her eyes, walking into his squadron like she belonged. In the sky more than on earth. He closed his eyes. Get me Denver Center. Now. At Nellis. Master Sergeant Tony Castellanos was reviewing maintenance logs when a junior airman shoved a radio into his hands. Sergeant, listen. The voice came through calm, measured. Phoenix. Tony's hand shook. He had crewed for her once, had seen her walk off a jet that should have been a coffin. He whispered it like a promise. She's got them. At Ramstein in Germany, pilots 6 time zones ahead crowded into a ready room. Radios hissed with the emergency frequency. Young lieutenants leaned forward, wide-eyed. Veterans nodded with grim respect. She's still out there, one said softly. And in living rooms across America, retired airmen tuned their scanners and wept quietly. Their children asked why. They couldn't explain. Some legends were beyond words. But in the cockpit of Flight 847, Sarah had no time for legends. The jet fought her with every shudder. The yoke resisted like dead weight. Warning lights glared. Mike Thompson's jaw was clenched so tight the muscle twitched. His voice broke through gritted teeth. Sarah, in 23 years, I've never. She cut him off. Then we'll do this together. Think like a test pilot, Mike. Nothing about this is going to feel right. Trust the physics. Trust me. Lisa read off the numbers with military cadence. Altitude 28,000. Airspeed 340. Response sluggish on all axes. Sarah leaned forward. We'll need to keep her fast. Too slow, we stall. Too fast, we overshoot. It's a knife edge. You two keep her stable. I'll manage the energy. Thompson glanced sideways. Sweat streaked his face, but in his eyes was something new, trust. You've done this before? He asked. Sarah nodded. In combat, with an F-16 full of holes, alone. Silence. Then he gave the faintest of smiles. Guess I'm glad you chose seat 13F. The jet jolted hard. Alarms blared. Lisa swore under her breath. Sarah grabbed the mic. Denver Center, Phoenix, we need a runway, longest you've got. The controller's reply was immediate. Runway 16 right. Cleared and held. All traffic diverted. You're cleared to land in any manner you choose, Colonel. Sarah exhaled slowly. Felt the weight of that sentence. Any manner you choose. No one gave that freedom lightly. Not to civilians, not to anyone, but to Phoenix. They would. Far below, Denver International prepared for war. Fire trucks lined the runway. Foam cannons primed. Ambulances clustered like sentinels. Crash recovery teams stood by. Even the Colorado National Guard scrambled helicopters for medevac airport. Director Susan Morrison had never seen anything like it. 37 emergency vehicles staged for one aircraft. Her voice shook as she reported into her radio. Runway clear. All units in position. God help them. Above the Rockies. Hawk and Viper slid into formation alongside the wounded 757. The Raptor's canopy gleamed in the sun. A sleek guardian beside a lumbering giant that staggered through the thin air. Hawk's eyes scanned the jet. noting the rocking wings, the nose angle, the unnatural engine strain. He keyed his mic. United 847. Hawk Flight has you in sight, Phoenix. It's Rodriguez. We're here. What do you need? Sarah's voice came back, a lifeline cutting through the static. Hawk, good to hear you. I need coordination with approach control. Runway 16 right. Cleared and clear. And Hawk, she paused, her voice edged with wry humor even now. Throw out your manuals. This landing won't look like any you've practiced. Hawk glanced at his wingman. Amy's eyes were wide but fierce. Copy that, Phoenix, Hawk answered. We've got your 6. In his chest, his heart hammered with something more than adrenaline. It was pride. To fly beside her, to be part of this. For everyone on frequency, this was no longer a routine emergency. It was history unfolding, and in the cockpit, Sarah knew it. She felt the weight of expectation, the eyes of bases, of cadets, of veterans, of strangers. She had never wanted it. Not like this. She wanted to be anonymous. Seat 13F, a sweater, a daughter flying home. But the world didn't care what she wanted. The world wanted Phoenix, and Phoenix was all she could be now. She rested her hand lightly on the console, feeling the hum. The shiver of a wounded bird fighting gravity. All right, she whispered, half to herself, half to the jet. Let's bring them home. That was the beginning of the endgame. In the cabin, passengers whispered her name now, passed from row to row. The mother with twins told an elderly couple, she's a real colonel. She's famous for saving people. The businessman muttered to a student, my brother talked about Phoenix. Said she was a legend. And slowly fear began to shift. Not gone, never gone, but replaced by something else. Something fragile. Hope. Hope carried on the voice of one woman. And as the Rockies glowed beneath the falling sun, S2F-22 Raptors held formation like angels at her wings. Sarah Martinez guided the crippled Boeing toward Denver. Every second mattered. Every breath counted. Every soul waited, and Phoenix prepared to gamble everything. One last time. How you land a bird that no longer wants to fly? The question hung in Sarah's mind as the Rockies rolled beneath them, peaks gilded by the low sun. The Boeing 757 lurched, heavy, wounded, like a creature staggering toward its last stand. Every vibration, every shudder of metal against gravity told her the truth. This plane was dying, but not today. Not if she could help it. The cockpit was a crucible of tension. Captain Mike Thompson's jaw locked tight, sweat dripping down his temples as he fought. The yoke like a man wrestling chains. First Officer Lisa Chun's voice moved with a rhythm that anchored them all altitude, speed, headings, every number carved into calm precision. Sarah sat in the jump seat, headset pressing against her ears. Not a uniform in sight, just denim, a navy sweater, and the weight of 127 lives. But a voice carried the authority of someone who had stared down death before and refused to blink. Mike, she said softly, steady as stone. From here on out, nothing will feel right. Too fast, too steep, too wrong. But trust it. Trust me. His eyes flicked toward her. For a heartbeat, disbelief still lingered. This woman pulled from the cabin. Just a passenger. But then he looked deeper, and what he saw was the steel beneath. Phoenix, he nodded once. You have it. Outside, 2 F-22 Raptors floated in formation. Hawk and Viper, their sleek wings catching light like blades. Kevin Rodriguez's voice cut across the frequency. Steady, professional. Phoenix, Hawk Flight is with you. Runway 16 right is clear. All traffic diverted. Emergency services. Waiting. Whatever you need. Just say it. Sarah glanced out the window, caught the glint of their canopies, guardians, angels. She allowed herself the smallest smile. Hawk, Viper, she said, her voice even, will be coming in hot. Steeper than standard. Fast. This is going to get ugly. Just hold the sky with us. Copy that, Hawk replied. You bring her down, Phoenix. We'll light the path. Below, Denver International bristled with fire trucks, ambulances, crash rigs, 39 emergency vehicles, staged like soldiers for war. Chief Robert Martinez, no relation to Sarah, stood at the command post, headset clamped tight, his voice cut sharp over radio. All units, aircraft inbound, expect high-speed landing. Possible runway excursion, foam trucks, hold your lines. Med teams ready for mass casualty. The runways gleamed, cleared of all traffic. Lights blazed like arrows pointing home, and beyond the fences, civilians had gathered, airline employees, passengers from delayed flights, even veterans who had driven in after hearing her name, Phoenix. They stood in silence, eyes fixed on the horizon. Inside the cabin, the storm of panic had softened. Fear remained raw, human, but Sarah's announcement still echoed. We will get through this, passengers. Held hands now. Strangers bound by common fate. Robert Kim, the businessman, no longer cared about quarterly reports. He was helping an elderly man tighten his oxygen mask. Maria Santos clutched her twins, whispering, "The lady pilot's going to get us home, Jennifer." Walsh moved through the aisles with renewed purpose. She wasn't just an attendant anymore. She was part of Sarah's crew. The college students, once laughing, now sat in prayerful silence, their earbuds dangling forgotten. In seat 13F, Sarah's empty coffee cup still rested in the holder. The sweater draped across her shoulders looked soft, ordinary, but every soul aboard now knew the truth. Phoenix was flying their plane. The descent began, altitude 15,000. Lisa called, the jet shook, wings wobbling as Thompson muscled the yoke. Sarah leaned forward. Mike, ease her nose. Don't fight her coax. Her. Think of her as a wounded bird. She wants to drop. But if you give her steady pressure, she glide. Thompson grunted, his arms straining. But he obeyed, slowly, painfully. The nose steadied. Good, Sarah said. Now keep her fast. 180 knots minimum. If we drop lower, she stall. And stalls, in this condition, are unrecoverable. Lisa's voice carried numbers like a lifeline. Speed 190. Altitude 14,000. Outside, the Rockies gave way to flatland. Denver sprawled ahead. The runways glinting silver in the fading light. Denver approach, united. 847. Sarah transmitted. We're beginning final approach. Runway 16 right. Be advised, this will be steep, hot, and non-standard. The controller's voice cracked once before steadying. United 847. Cleared to land any way you see fit. Emergency services in position. Colonel Martinez. The entire field is yours. For a beat, silence filled the cockpit. Even Mike and Lisa felt it, the weight of that statement. The field is yours. Sarah closed her eyes, drew a breath, felt the jet's tremor beneath her hands. All right. She whispered, let's bring her home. 10,000 feet. The cabin tilted. Gravity pulled hard. Passengers gasped. A boy cried out, Mom, we're falling. Jennifer's voice rang steady. We are landing. Hold tight. In the cockpit, Lisa called the numbers. Altitude 10,000. Speed 185. Sarah nodded. Hold it. Keep the nose steady. Let her write it down. Mike's jaw flexed, sweat dripping into his collar. Feels like she wants to roll left. Counter with thrust, Sarah said instantly. More on the right engine, gentle. Don't yank her. He obeyed. The nose steadied. Lisa exhaled. Still on glide. At 5,000 feet, the escort. Raptors slid closer. Hawk's voice carried in her headset. Phoenix, you're looking stable. Field in sight. We'll shadow you down. Sarah's eyes flicked to the runway lights ahead. A glowing ribbon in the dusk. Copy, Hawk. Stay with us. We may need every angel we can get. 3,000 feet. The aircraft rattled. Warning lights screamed. A hydraulic pump coughed its death rattle. Lisa's voice strained. Response. Lagging, controls heavy. Stay with her. Sarah commanded. Calm, clipped. You've got this. Mike's arms shook with the effort of holding steady, his knuckles blanched white. Sarah placed her hand over his, not to take control, but to anchor him. You're not alone, Mike. Feel her. Don't fight her. Just guide. His eyes flicked to hers. He nodded, jaw clenched. At 2,000 feet, the cabin fell silent. No sobs, no screams, just breath. Passengers clutched one another, eyes wide, hearts thundering. Maria whispered into her boy's hair. Robert Kim pressed his forehead against the seat in front of him. The students held hands. Every soul aboard felt the weight of gravity pulling them toward the earth. And in the cockpit, Sarah's voice was the only constant. 1,000 feet. Keep her steady. Trust it. The runway stretched ahead like salvation. Emergency lights lined both sides, flashing red, white, amber. Foam trucks waited like watchful giants. Every eye at Denver International turned skyward as the crippled Boeing dropped from the clouds. 500 feet. Lisa's voice cracked but held. Airspeed 182. Sarah nodded. Good. Hold it, Mike. Shallow flare at 50 feet. Fly her onto the concrete. Don't drop her. Fly her. His teeth clenched. Copy. 300 feet. The jet groaned. Metal straining. 200. The runway rushed up, a gray river in the fading light. Sarah's heart thudded once, hard. Her voice sharpened. Now, Mike, flare. 50 feet. The nose lifted, just enough. The wheels reached, the earth waited, and at that knife-edge moment, suspended between sky and ground, life and death, legend and silence, Sarah Martinez held her breath. What does it feel like when steel meets earth? When a wounded bird tries to land with broken wings? The answer came in a roar. The main landing gear slammed onto runway 16R with a bone-jarring crack. The Boeing 757 shuddered, screamed, groaned. Like a giant beast forced to crawl on shattered legs. For a heartbeat, the cabin gasped as one man's silence. Breath held, waiting for the next strike. The nose pitched forward. Mike Thompson's hands fought the yoke with raw muscle. Sarah's voice cut through like a knife. Hold her. Don't drop, the nosies are down. He obeyed. Every sinew in his arms burned, sweat blurring his vision. With a scream of protest, the nose gear kissed the runway. The jet was down, but not safe. Reverse thrust. Sarah barked. Thompson slammed the levers forward. The engines roared, howled in fury as they clawed at air, trying to drag 180,000 pounds of wounded steel to a stop. Lisa, call speeds. 100 knots. The aircraft vibrated violently, brakes useless without hydraulics, the nose wobbling like a drunk giant. The runway lights blurred past. Foam trucks paced them like hounds at a hunt. 90. 80. Sarah's jaw locked. Not enough deceleration. Too fast. Too much momentum. Mike, more thrust on 2 now. He shoved. The left engine screamed. The nose veered. Sarah countered instantly. Right rudder. Gentle. Hold it. 70, 60. The cabin rocked. Passengers clung to each other. A child wailed, muffled by his mother's chest. 50. Lisa called. Sarah's hand hovered near the panel, steady, her voice low, calm. Almost there. Stay with her. 40, 30. The engines thundered one last scream. Then the plane lurched, shuddered, slowed rolling until mercifully it stopped, 800 yards from the runway's end. The cockpit fell into silence, only 3 people breathing, ragged and heavy, only the faint whine of cooling turbines. Thompson's voice broke, hoarse, disbelieving. We stopped. Sarah closed her eyes. Just for a moment, then she opened them. Duty didn't end at touchdown. Mike, Lisa, the emergency isn't over until everyone's off this jet. Both nodded, the truth cutting through the fog of survival in the cabin. The silence shattered. A rush of sobs, laughter, prayers. Strangers clutched each other. Maria Santos kissed her son's foreheads. Tears streaming unchecked, Robert Kim pressed his palms together, whispering something that sounded like thanks. The college students who just hours ago had been laughing about exams now held each other with wide eyes, whispering, "She saved." U.S. Jennifer Walsh moved down the aisle, voice quivering but strong. "Remain seated. Remain calm until the crew instructs you to move. We are safe. The procedures are still in effect." Safe. The word felt foreign, fragile, like glass balanced on a ledge, because Sarah knew better. The aircraft still hissed with systems shutting. Down, hydraulics dead, sparks possible, and outside, fire crews were rushing in. She leaned into the radio. "Denver Tower. Phoenix. United 847 has stopped. Request immediate evac procedures." The controller's voice cracked. "Copy. Phoenix. Fire crews en route. Emergency stairs positioned. All services standing by." The first vehicle surrounded them, red lights flashing, sirens muted now to a low wail. Phone trucks stood ready, white nozzles aimed, ambulances lined up. Through the cockpit window, Sarah saw them, a formation of uniforms. Military personnel on the tarmac, standing rigid, eyes locked on her jet. Not investigators, not accident officials, soldiers, airmen, veterans. They had come to witness, to honor. Her throat tightened, but she forced her voice steady. "Mike, Lisa will lead evac. No panic. Priority is order." Both nodded in the cabin. The door hissed open, portable stairs rolled up. Fresh air blasted in, cool, cutting through the recycled cabin stench of fear and sweat. "Front rows first," Jennifer commanded. Her hands no longer shook. She was steady now, because Phoenix had been steady. One by one, passengers emerged into the fading light. 8-year-old Danny Wilson was first, gripping his mother's hand. His eyes went wide at the sight, dozens of fire trucks, ambulances, and a line of military uniforms saluting. "Mom," he whispered, tugging her sleeve. "They're all standing for her." Linda Wilson followed his gaze, and in that moment, she understood their family hadn't just survived an emergency. They had been carried home by a legend. Behind them, more passengers filed out. Maria with her twins, clutching them like treasure. Robert Kim, tears streaking his cheeks, stumbling into the open air like a man reborn. The students, wide-eyed, whispering, "That's her. That's Phoenix." Every step down those stairs was an act of rebirth. And every soul glanced back once, toward the cockpit, toward the woman who had taken seat 13F and turned it into command. Inside, Sarah was still at work. She moved through shutdown procedures with Thompson and Chun, hands steady on switches, securing what was left of the jet's dignity. "Hydraulics confirmed out," Chun reported softly. "Engines secure," Thompson added. His voice was quiet now, reverent. "Sarah, I've flown for 23 years. I've never seen airmanship like that." Sarah shook her head. "You flew her, I just nudged." But Lisa leaned closer, eyes glinting. "Ma'am, you turned catastrophe into routine. You made the impossible look ordinary." Sarah said nothing. The words scraped against something she had buried long ago. She wasn't a miracle worker. She was a soldier who had done her job. But as Jennifer appeared in the cockpit doorway, tears shining in her eyes, Sarah knew it wasn't about her. It was about what 127 souls carried now life. When death had been so near, "Colonel," Jennifer whispered, "they want to see you." Sarah stepped into the open air. The tarmac stretched before her, bathed in the orange glow of the setting sun. Fire crews stood at attention, ambulances idled, and beyond them, the line of uniformed airmen, soldiers, veterans, spouses, children, at their head stood Major Kevin "Hawk" Rodriguez, still in his flight suit, helmet tucked beneath his arm, his wingman beside him. Behind them, faces she recognized, squadron mates, mechanics, comrades from deployments long past. Rodriguez's voice rang across the silence. Colonel Sarah Martinez, on behalf of the United States Air Force and the aviation community. We request permission to render honors. Sarah froze. Her chest tightened. Permission. They weren't just saluting her landing. They were saluting her life, every mission, every scar, every soul she had brought home. Her throat burned, but her voice was steady. Permission granted. Rodriguez snapped to attention. Saluted. His wingman followed. Then, like dominoes falling, every uniform on the tarmac came to attention. Salutes rising in perfect unison. The silence was profound. Only the faint whine of engines, the crackle of fire radios, the click of cameras somewhere in the distance. Sarah, still in jeans and her navy sweater, lifted her hand, returned the salute with the same precision she had learned as a cadet 26 years ago. For a long moment, time stood still, and then it passed like breath released after too long held. She turned, saw passengers watching, eyes wide, tears falling, saw Jennifer, hand over her heart, saw Danny Wilson clutching his crumpled boarding pass, whispering, "She's a fighter. Pilot Mom, a real one." Sarah knelt when he ran to her. His eyes sparkled with innocence and awe. "Ma'am, are you really brave?" he asked. She considered the question carefully. "Brave people," she said softly, "are just ordinary people who do what needs to be done when others are counting on them." Danny smiled. "Will you sign my boarding pass?" She smiled back. Of course. And as she scrawled her call sign across paper smudged with fingerprints, Sarah Martinez Phoenix felt the truth echo in her chest. Bravery wasn't in medals or legends, or even in call signs whispered across radios. It was here, in the faces of survivors, in the quiet dignity of those who held the line when fear said run. The mission wasn't over, but for the first time in years, she felt the weight lift. Not because she had survived, but because 127 others had. And sometimes, dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. How do you return to silence when the world is roaring your name? Sarah stepped from the tarmac into chaos. Not the chaos of panic, not anymore. The chaos of survival. Reporters had swarmed outside the perimeter, lenses flashing, microphones thrusting. Like bayonets through the crowd, officials scrambled with clipboards. Radios and urgent whispers, passengers dazed and trembling were herded toward buses. Wrapped in blankets, offered bottled water by trembling hands, and everywhere, the name spread like fire. Phoenix, a television producer, out of breath, barked into his phone. "Yes, she's here. The Phoenix. She landed it herself." A paramedic helping a passenger murmured, "Did you hear? She's the one they talk about. The one from Afghanistan, even among passengers." Whispers circulated faster than the medical staff could hand out bandages. She was just sitting there. Row 13. She saved us, with her. With her voice. No, you don't get it. She's famous. She's a legend. Sarah's jaw clenched. Legend. She hated that word. To her, legends were ghosts. People who didn't come home. Military brass descended within the hour. Colonel Marcus Webb arrived first, flown in on a command jet from Langley, his uniform immaculate. His expression caught between awe and anger. He found her sitting alone on a folding chair near the command post, water bottle untouched in her hand, eyes fixed on the cooling fuselage of the 757. "Sarah," she didn't look up. "Marcus, you should have called me. I wasn't planning on landing a crippled 757 today." He exhaled sharply through his nose. He wanted to be angry, wanted to scold, but instead, his voice broke. "You saved them again." Sarah shook her head. "Mike flew her." Lisa read the numbers. Jennifer kept the cabin calm. "I was just a passenger who spoke up." He crouched in front of her, lowering his voice so no one else could hear. "Don't do that. Don't diminish this. You took command when everyone else froze. You carried them across the fire. That's who you are." Her jaw tightened. "That's who I was." At the perimeter, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions through the wire fence. Colonel Martinez, how did you do it? Is it true you saved aircraft in combat? Phoenix, what's your message to America tonight? The words struck her like shrapnel. Phoenix. She rose abruptly, turning her back to the crowd. Marcus, she said, low. Get me out of here. The Webb shook his head. You know I can't. The world just watched a miracle, and miracles have names. Her hands tightened around the bottle until the plastic creaked. I didn't do this for them. I didn't even want this. I know, he said softly, but the burden of surviving is that people will always want to know how. By nightfall, the media had their story. Headlines splashed across screens. Air Force hero saves 127 lives. Phoenix rises again. The woman in seat 13F. Networks replayed shaky cell phone footage from passengers. Her voice over the intercom. Steady, calm, commanding. The moment the escort Raptors appeared beside the jet, the salutes on the runway, and everywhere, the same refrain. Phoenix, inside the debrief tent. Sarah sat at a folding table under fluorescent lights. A recorder clicked on. The NTSB investigator leaned forward, pen poised. Colonel Martinez, please describe in your own words the sequence of events from the moment you identified the failure. Sarah's hands folded together, knuckles white. She forced herself to speak clinically. Hydraulic pressure, differential thrust, landing configuration, numbers, checklists, but as the words came, so did the ghosts. Her mind didn't see the 757. It saw a night sky over Kandahar, tracer fire streaking past. Her F-16 riddled with holes, hydraulics pouring out like lifeblood. She heard the desperate voice of her wingman, cut short mid-transmission. She felt the tremor of impact when she brought her jet down against every law of physics. And she remembered walking away when he hadn't. Her voice faltered. The investigator tilted his head. Colonel, are you all right? She blinked, forcing herself back into the tent, back into the now. I'm fine, she lied. Continue. Later, when the officials finally released her, she slipped away from the floodlights, away from the cameras. She found herself standing at the edge of the runway, wind tugging her hair, the stars overhead bright and merciless. The 757 still sat at the far end, fire crews swarming it, foam staining the asphalt, her eyes fixed on it. The wounded bird, a shadow, moved behind her. Hawk Rodriguez, helmet still under his arm, stepped up beside her. Hell of a landing, he said quietly. She gave a humorless laugh. Ugly as sin. Ugly beats fireballs. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the hum of generators. You know, Hawk said finally, when the call went out that Phoenix was in the sky again. Every pilot I know stopped what they were doing. Radios lit up across the world. You reminded us why we wear the patch. Sarah's jaw clenched. I didn't want that. Doesn't matter what you wanted, Hawk said gently. It matters what they needed. She swallowed hard, turned her gaze skyward. Then maybe that's the curse. To always be needed when all you want is to disappear. Hawk was quiet for a long moment. Then he said softly, or maybe it's the gift too? Show up when no one else can. She didn't answer, because deep down, she wasn't sure which it was. In a hotel room that night, the silence was unbearable. The television blared with news panels dissecting her every word. Passengers being interviewed, their voices trembling with gratitude. Military analysts calling her a hero. She muted, sat in the dark. Her sweater still smelled faintly of jet fuel. Her hands still trembled faintly. Though she hid it well, she pulled out her phone. A single missed call glared on the screen. From her mother, she hesitated, then hit dial. The line clicked, a familiar voice, shaky but strong. Sarah? Sarah closed her eyes. I'm here, Mom. Oh, thank God. I saw the news. They said a woman, a pilot, saved everyone. I knew it was you. I knew. Tears slid down Sarah's cheeks. Silent, uninvited. Her mother's voice softened. You always said you didn't want to be a hero, and you never were. You were just my daughter. But Sarah, sometimes the world needs both. Sarah pressed the phone to her ear, letting the words settle into the cracks of her heart. For once, she didn't argue. She hung up, sat back in the silence, and for the first time since seat 13F, she allowed herself to feel it, not pride, not relief, something quieter, heavier, the simple, brutal truth of survival. Not everyone gets it. Not everyone deserves it. But when it comes, it demands you live for more than yourself. Her reflection stared back from the darkened window sweater. Jeans, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. Not Phoenix, not Legend, not even Colonel, just Sarah. But somewhere in that reflection, she saw it. The fire. The ember that had never gone out. And she whispered into the silence. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. How do you go home when the world refuses to let you? Sarah sat in the hotel lobby the next morning. Coffee untouched, eyes hidden behind sunglasses. The television mounted above the check-in desk blasted her name again. Phoenix saves Flight 847. Clips replayed. F-22 escorts shimmering beside a 757. Passengers crying as they stepped onto the runway. Soldiers saluting as if before royalty. She shifted in her chair, wishing for silence, but silence was gone. A voice startled her. Colonel Martinez? She turned. A man in a crisp suit, badge clipped to his belt. Department of Defense liaison. Headquarters wants a debrief, he said flatly. The Secretary of the Air Force herself is requesting your presence today. Sarah's stomach sank. I'm not active duty. He nodded once. Doesn't matter. You're Phoenix. By noon, she sat in a government SUV. City flashing past. Cameras chased. Reporters shouting questions as the vehicle pulled away from the hotel. At the base, a conference room waited. Generals, staff officers, advisors, all eyes on her. Colonel Marcus Webb sat among them, arms crossed, watching. The chairman of the joint. Chiefs himself leaned forward, voice measured. Colonel Martinez, the nation saw what you did. We need figures like you right now. Voices of competence, resilience, courage. We want you back on the team. Training pilots, speaking publicly, inspiring the next generation. Sarah's throat tightened. With respect, sir. I retired for a reason. I didn't want this spotlight. I didn't ask for it. The general's gaze sharpened. Heroes don't get to choose when they're needed. The words cut deeper than they intended. She flashed back to her wingmans. Voice cut off in fire. To the funerals, to the folded flags, to the heavy silence of coming home when others did not. Her voice shook as she answered. And what about when being needed means you lose everything? What then? The room fell quiet. No one had an answer. Afterward, Marcus caught her in the corridor. His tone was softer now. They're not wrong, Sarah. Kids need someone like you. Pilots need someone who's walked through fire and made it out. She met his eyes. And what if I'm tired of fire, Marcus? What if I just want to be human again? His jaw tightened, but his voice softened. Then maybe being human is what they need to see. Meanwhile, the public storm swelled. Passengers appeared on morning shows, voices quivering. She saved. U.S. She stayed calm. Without her, we'd be gone. A child, Danny Wilson, held up his boarding pass on national TV. Her signature scrawled across it. She told me brave people are just ordinary people who do what needs to be done. That clip went viral. Millions shared it. Schools replayed it. Military academies printed it on posters, and the name Phoenix grew louder. Sarah recoiled from it all. To her, it wasn't inspiration. It was exposure, a ripping open of scars she'd fought to bury. One evening, she visited the families of passengers. Still in the hospital, she walked in quietly, jeans, sweater, no rank on her shoulders. But when she stepped through the door, the room shifted. A mother clutched her hand, sobbing thank you. A father hugged her so tightly she could hardly breathe. Survivors whispered her name, touching her arm as if to confirm she was real. She forced herself to smile, to nod, to offer words, but inside, a storm raged. Every thank you sounded like another weight on her chest. Every grateful tear reminded her of comrades who had never been thanked because they hadn't come home. She excused herself, stepped outside into the hospital courtyard, and finally let her tears fall where no one could see. Later that night, she sat alone in her room, staring at her reflection. The sweater was the same. The woman was the same. But the eyes tired, haunted, felt foreign. Who am I now? She whispered. Her mind echoed two answers. Phoenix, Sarah, two names, two lives. One woman trapped between them. The next morning, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She almost ignored it. Almost, she answered. A voice she hadn't heard in years spoke softly, raspy, familiar. Colonel? It's Sergeant Castellanos. We served together. You probably don't remember me. Her throat tightened. Tony, I remember. Silence. Then his voice cracked. I just wanted to say, what you did yesterday. It mattered. It reminded us. Those of us who made it home, and those who didn't, you carried them all again. She closed her eyes. The ache was sharp, but there was warmth too. Tony, she whispered. I wasn't trying to be anyone's symbol. I just did what had to be done. That's what makes you one, he replied. That night, she walked to the edge of the base airfield. The runway stretched long into the dark, lights glimmering like stars laid flat on Earth. She remembered every takeoff, every mission, every landing where she wasn't sure she'd make it back. Her chest rose and fell with a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding for years. Somewhere deep inside, she knew Marcus was right. Hawk was right. Tony was right. The world wasn't asking her to go back to war. It was asking her to show that scars don't mean the end. That survival, even when broken, still carries weight. But part of her still wanted silence, anonymity. Seat 13F. The war inside her wasn't over. She looked at the runway lights. They seemed to whisper, choose. Her phone buzzed again in her pocket. Another call, this one from Washington. She hesitated, thumb hovering. And in that pause, balanced between flight and retreat, between Sarah and Phoenix, she realized the truth. The choice would define her. She pressed the phone to her ear. Colonel Martinez. The voice on the other end said, urgent, steady, unyielding. We need you. Her heart pounded, because once again, silence was gone. What do you say when the world demands more of you than you ever wanted to give? Sarah held the phone against her ear, the voice from Washington echoing, we need you. For a long moment, she said nothing, just stared at the runway lights glowing. Outside her window, stretched like a road she had walked 1,000 times before, a road that always led back into fire. Finally, she answered, then you'll have me. But not as Phoenix, not as a symbol as Sarah. The line was silent then. The voice replied, that will be enough. Days later, a press conference was called. Not by Sarah, but by the Air Force. They wanted the world to see her, to hear her, to claim her as their own. She stood behind the podium in a plain navy blazer, hair pulled back, no medals on her chest, no call sign on display, just Sarah Martinez. The room was packed. Cameras whirred. Reporters leaned forward. Survivors from Flight 847 sat in the front row, some still wrapped in hospital blankets, their eyes fixed on her with quiet reverence. She cleared her throat, gripped the edges of the podium, and began. I wasn't supposed to be here. I was supposed to be a passenger, seat 13F, just another. Face on another flight, but life doesn't ask us what role we want. It hands us the one that's needed. Her voice wavered. She steadied it. On that flight, there were no heroes. There were just people who chose not to give in to fear. The crew, the passengers, the escorts, the responders on the ground, they All carried this together. I just happened to speak when silence wasn't enough. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras flashed, but she wasn't speaking for them. She was speaking for herself. For years, I carried the weight of a name I didn't ask for. Phoenix, a call sign born in war, carried through fire and buried under loss. I thought that name belonged to ghosts, to a version of me that didn't deserve to survive. She paused. Her eyes swept the crowd. Danny Wilson was there, clutching his signed boarding pass, beaming. Maria Santos with her twins Robert Kim, Jennifer Walsh, her uniform immaculate. Standing tall, Sarah's chest ached. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe Phoenix isn't about me. Maybe it's about what we carry for each other. About rising again and again, even when the world tries to break us. About living, not for medals, not for legends, but for the people who still need us here. Her voice softened. So no, I'm not a hero. I'm just Sarah. But if that name Phoenix means anything to you, let it mean this, that survival is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of responsibility. To live, to help, to honor the ones who couldn't. The room was silent, not a cough, not a whisper, only the weight of her words, and then, slowly one person rose. Jennifer. She brought her hand to her brow in salute. Others followed, survivors, reporters, even generals, until the room stood as one. Sarah's eyes burned. She lifted her hand, returned the salute. Not as Phoenix, not as a legend, but as Sarah Martinez. That night, she walked alone across the airfield, the hum of jets in the distance, the cool bite of wind against her face. She stopped at the edge of the runway, closed her eyes, and let the memories come. The faces of comrades lost, the voices of those who hadn't made it home. She whispered their names, one by one, a roll call of the fallen. Then she whispered the names of the passengers she had watched step off the 757 alive. 2 lists, 2 weights, balanced. Her tears came quiet and steady. But this time, they weren't just grief. They were release. Because she understood now. Phoenix wasn't about never falling. It was about rising when you did. In the weeks that followed, Sarah didn't vanish into silence again. She visited schools where children asked not about combat, but about courage. She spoke at bases, not of tactics, but of survival and humanity. She met with survivors who needed to see her not as untouchable, but as one of them. She never wore her medals, never leaned on her legend. She wore her scars, her voice, her silence, and in that silence, she found strength again. One afternoon, months later, she sat in a quiet cafe near her hometown. Just Sarah, no cameras, no uniforms. A little boy walked up shyly, clutching a paper airplane. "Are you Phoenix?" he asked. She smiled softly. "Sometimes, but mostly, I'm just Sarah." The boy grinned, handed her the paper plane, and ran off. She unfolded it. Inside, in a child's scrawl, were 3 words. "Thank you." Anyway, her throat tightened. She folded the paper carefully, tucking it into her sweater pocket. She didn't need the world to remember her. What mattered was that she remembered who she was. As the sun dipped low that evening, Sarah walked outside, watching a jet climb into the sky. Contrails streaked white across fading blue. She breathed deep, felt the quiet settle, and in that moment, she knew she had finally found balance. Not in being Phoenix, not in being just Sarah, but in carrying both with dignity, because sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.